it's the things that we do now with kids, how we teach kids, how we encourage kids, how we educate kids that dictates our future. It's not about, let's be honest, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, that's not our future. Just by definition, they're old. But how we engage kids shapes the trajectory of everything, the whole future, not just America, but everything. And so I'm a huge fan of team sports. Tackle football's up right now. Bring out your kids. Do not let them sit there, play the video games, eat Twinkies, and just turn into zombies. Help them learn to do hard things, try hard things, get knocked down, get back up. Makes all the difference in the world. I had an interesting night last night, and this is something that I wanted to mention to you guys. My 10-year-old, it was late at night, boys are going to bed, and he says, Dad, will you come sing Amazing Grace for me? Now, this is not a normal request in my house. And, it's tough for me because when my brother died, that song was played at his funeral. It's kind of actually a little traumatic for me. And he asked me to come and sing it. And so I did. And it reminded me that, particularly for the men out there that are listening to this, the kind of examples we are for our sons and the young men in our communities, it really matters. Like, my son is huge, loves to play football, just a dude. But he also likes to sing. He really does. He likes to sing and read and do all kinds of other things. And I need to engage him where he is and not just things I'm comfortable with. I'm not a great singer. I am not. I am no Luke Bryan. I cannot do that. But I can do it for him. And so meeting our young men, young women where they are with what they need and being encouraging adults in their lives, it was just a reminder how important that is, and not to forget that. We focus so often on the politics of the day and things like that sometimes we miss those things. We say, hey, I'm paying attention to this. I'm watching this debate. I'm watching this press conference. Hey, I'll be there in a minute. I just urge you, when they're there and they're asking, to show up. And that matters so much. And it was just a thing that I heard in my house that I engaged, and I want to be honest about it with you guys. It's Friday, though, and we don't need to have everything.
Hold on. Was there a reason that he asked you to do that? I mean, did he express some purpose behind it?
No, it's something that I've done periodically. Like when he is having a rough night, as a younger kid, I'd sing to him. And for him, it's a comforting thing. His mama usually tucks him in and she's a mama. She's great. She's hugs and everything like that. I usually, we're talking to him, we're encouraging him, but it's more like on the field. And so I think he was just having a moment where he's like, I just need to know that my dad will do something for me that, matters to me for my own reasons.
Okay, so that adds another level of context to it that explains a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't saying, dance for me, Dad. This wasn't a...
But if he had, you'd have done it.
I might. But this for him was, I need to know that you hear me and that something that matters to me. And like I said, with my boys, I don't really push too much on, I want to talk to them, but I want them to want to talk. And so he didn't really want to tell me, hey, why was I feeling like I needed you to do that? But he just did. And that was it. And it was great. And I think it's easy to forget those things and how much they actually matter and how much more they matter than like me getting a great post on X and people liking it. So don't miss what's right in front of you for something else. That's the big thing that I'm trying to say. But as I was mentioning, it is Friday. We need to enjoy it. This is your show today. I've got some notes. We'll roll through them, but it's going to get wonky and weird without you guys calling in and engaging. So 615-737-9986. That's 615-737-9986. You can text in. You can call in. Let's have the conversation. Let's have a good show today. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll get right into, the news of the day is Biden going to stay or is he going to go? This is Super Talk 99.7, and you're listening to The Matt Murphy Show.
A Hendersonville traffic stop turns into a high-speed chase this morning, and the SpaceX program, it's grounded after last night's launch didn't quite go as planned. We'll have those stories at 12:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. Cameron Smith here with you at DCameronSmith on X, Twitter. No one knows what we're calling it anymore. I think most people call it Twitter because it's very hard to say you're Xing.
It's Twix.
Twix.
Kit Kat was taken, so we're using Twix.
Twix. Okay. That's a good hybrid. Several of y'all on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986, commented on the washing of the big truck. And I wanted to acknowledge that and go back to that. One, I've got 4 boys in my house. So they are definitely, y'all know about the Beast. I talk about the Beast all the time. They are definitely helping me clean my truck this afternoon. That's not part of the equation. I am a little nervous because the middle beast.
Which one uses the brick?
Middle beast.
Okay.
He's 13 now. So we hope that doesn't happen again. No bricks will be allowed near the car. That much is no bricks near the truck. That's just not happening. But that's what has me nervous is, whacking it with something, but I need to teach them. That's my mantra of let's do this right. We're going to get mama's car and we're going to get my truck. She's out of town. And so we're going to get everything real cleaned up.
I thought you were going to say we'll get mama's car and wash that with the brick.
Yeah, we can watch that one with a brick. Mama's car. Well, this is mama's car, and mama's car it's a nice Expedition EL King Ranch. It's cool, but man, the Beast wear it down. So we got to clean it up, clean the trash out, detail it really good. We got all the stuff. We got our wash buckets.
Can you fit the whole family in the truck?
No.
You can't.
I mean, I can, but we're missing a seatbelt.
Oh. Okay.
And so it's a big truck that will fit them, but it's got 3 in the back, 2 in the front. Hers, because it's extended, 3, 2, 2.
Oh, okay.
And so we can do everybody in her car. So at some point, we're just going to get a school bus and just,
move into it.
Yeah. For those of y'all know that we are a therapeutic foster family with youth villages, and my wife's attitude and my attitude are families who shows up. So some days we have 5 sons. Some days we have 3. Some days we have 7. Who knows? Just whoever shows up, and we work out logistics, however you figure that out. I came from my parents, Sid and Karen Smith, excellent, wonderful people who love people well. And we always had people in our house. Some days I'd come home from school, from Brentwood Academy, and there'd be somebody sleeping in my bed. Like one of my friends, one of my brother's friends, somebody that just needed a break. And mom would just say, just don't wake them up. I'm like, Mom, this is my bed. Why has I got somebody in my room? Well, they were just tired. And that's the kind of people I want to be. That,
Why is he eating my dinner? He was hungry.
Right. My dad, and I'm sorry I'm getting distracted. We'll talk politics in a second, but my dad had something called the meat bucket. And what he would do is he would go to the Kroger in Brentwood. It's now, that Kroger is now a furniture store or something. But he knew the butcher that worked behind the counter and basically would get all the meat that was about to go out of date for like a steal. And he didn't care. Ribeye, strip steak, chicken, pork, just whatever, meat. And he'd negotiate a deal, come home, and he'd grill it all. I mean, we're talking probably 20 pounds of meat, just stupid amounts of meat. And that was the meat bucket, and my buddies and I would all eat out of the meat bucket for the next several days. And that he'd do that week after week after week. He's a great cook. And man, we lived high on the hog, there because my dad had a good game plan with the butcher at Kroger. And so meat bucket was that mantra. I find that saying families who shows up is more effective than saying, come get the meat bucket. But it's the same idea. We want to be the kind of people, all of this is that sort of the Reagan big tent mindset of how do you get folks to the table? How do you get folks who might otherwise be a little suspicious, not so sure about you, come from different backgrounds, have different thoughts, different policies? How do you get them at the table? And if you do, it changes the game. And if you look at them, people that are different than you and say, well, I'm suspicious of you, it's hard to build, consensus on just about anything. That's in politics, outside of politics. You need people. And I had a great family for doing that. And we're trying to do some of the same things. So my boys will be out there washing that truck with me. We got some things. We'll take pictures. We'll post it. It's going to be weird. I just hope no one eats any soap. I've got dogs. You guys told me Irish Spring would keep the deer out of, and I think Belle heard that. They'd keep
I did.
Irish Spring would keep the deer out of my garden. So I went to Walmart and bought a ton of Irish Spring, and I chopped it up in my kitchen, and I put it all over my yard. Y'all know what happened?
They ate it.
My dogs ate it.
Oh,
my dogs go out there. What is that? What has Dixie got? She's eating soap. My dogs started eating the soap. So I tried it. I listened to you guys. Because of the authorities in the area, I may have tried the peeing around the garden idea at night. We tried hair. Those deer do not care. They like my beans so much that they don't care if you put soap or hair or whatever. They're hell bent on destroying the garden. But I appreciate the ideas anyway. That's just kind of where we ended up. Okay. We need to get into where we are in the race. What's actually happening here and what Democrats are thinking. We've got more people coming out and saying Biden needs to run away. He needs to go away. Just Democrats hadn't really figured out what that means for what he does right now. We'll talk about that on the other side of the break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Good afternoon. It's 12:31. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. It's sunny. It's 93 degrees. We'll get a complete steamy forecast to you here in just a few. A Nashville felon was arrested on drug and gun charges after a pursuit involving Hendersonville deputies very early this morning. Channel 4 reports that just before 3 o'clock this morning, deputies tried to make a traffic stop on Vietnam Veterans Boulevard, but the driver took off. Stop sticks were later deployed that disabled the vehicle, and the driver, Zyshawn Donnell, was taken into custody. Donnell charged with evading arrest, possession of a handgun by a felon, and the trafficking of cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. The sheriff's office said this arrest comes just months after he was released from an 8-year prison term. And the FAA, they have grounded SpaceX after a problem with a launch from Vandenberg Space Force Base on Thursday night. Here's ABC's Alex Stone.
Early indicators are the second stage rocket may have exploded and a batch of Starlink satellites were deployed in lower orbit than where they should be. SpaceX has made contact with some of them and wants to use onboard boosters to move them higher. That second stage rocket had a catastrophic failure, and now the FAA is grounding SpaceX until it can be determined what went wrong. That could impact not only deployment of Starlink satellites, but shipments to the International Space Station and human space flight.
That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Well, it's getting bad, folks. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show. I was trying to figure out just how bad things have gotten for Joe Biden. And then I came across it. Biden has been fact-checked by CNN. I know. Just contain your shock for a moment that CNN is fact-checking Joe Biden. And I'm telling you, they're doing it like they do it to Trump. Previously, this was a big point of contention for me, is that every time Trump says anything, we do an analysis for whether it's true or false, and it's a very strident analysis. It's not like, well, is it an exaggeration? Is it? Give you a good example. In Project 2025, when he said he had no idea, he didn't know anybody that had worked on that. Well, yeah, that's just a lie. He's known a bunch of people that worked on it. About 100, more than 100 worked for him. One was his deputy White House chief of staff. There were plenty of people he did know. And so the media just said, he's doing this. And they've been doing that really since he showed up on the scene. This has been the shtick of every time he says anything, chop it apart, dissect it. And I think that's fair game. You're a political figure. That's fine. The problem is Joe Biden, they hadn't done that to. They had basically said, yeah, he's blue collar Joe. Joe Biden. It's a good guy. Come on, man. The media's response was like, okay, cool. Tell me more. I've never made more than $400,000 in my life. He said that as President of the United He said that as President of the United States, who makes $400,000. We talked about it the other day. So Biden does lie. He does exaggerate. He has not been held to this excruciating standard that's the norm right now for Trump and other Republicans. But that's changed. And here's what's fascinating. So we heard the gaffe, the first one last night, of calling Vladimir Zelensky President Putin. In the press conference, he said, quote, I said, no, I'm sorry, Zelensky, and then I added 5 other names, close quote. Here's what CNN, this is CNN, this is not Fox News, this is CNN. Biden's last claim was false. He didn't utter 5 other names after he corrected the Putin-Zelensky mix-up. In fact, after he corrected himself, Zelensky said he's better than Putin. Biden agreed, and then Zelensky delivered remarks as Biden stood silently beside him. Now, is that a huge material lie? No, but that's my point, is that CNN is now holding Biden under that lens, and it's not going well. This one surprised me because I wasn't paying attention to Biden's flight schedule, but Biden talked about, and y'all heard this, Chris Hand played the quote, Biden spoke of the need to pace himself in his activities. He said, the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling 15 time zones a week before. Anyway, that's what it was about. CNN says that this is misleading. Biden did not travel abroad a week before the June 27th CNN presidential debate. In fact, he returned to the U.S. from Europe 12 days before the debate on June 15th. And he attended a fundraiser in L.A. on June 15th, returned to the White House on June 16th, and went to Camp David on June 20th. So this is CNN holding him to account and saying, no, here's actually what you did. You did intensive debate preparations. And so you just lied. You just told everybody, well, I was traveling and I was doing all this stuff right before the debate, and that's what caused the issue. That's just a lie. And CNN goes on. I won't go through all of them. Here was a big one. When he said, there's growing dissatisfaction on the West Bank from Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now. Well, actually, according to CNN, again, don't take my word for it, the limited available public opinion polling suggests the claim that Hamas is not popular now in the West Bank is not true, and that Hamas's popularity has increased there since his attack on Israel last October. Again, he's just saying stuff that's not true. Now he's getting called to the mat for it. And I think this is going to be his undoing. If the media has decided the key players. And I want to be real specific because I don't like it when talking heads talk about the media or they or shadowy conspiracy. I'm talking about the big dogs at places like CNN. Those folks have decided, you know what? We're not going to give this guy we're not going to play with kid gloves anymore. We're going to ask the tough questions. Now, the truth is they should ask tough questions all the time. So should Fox News. So should any journalist who's holding themselves out to be a reporter, for example, should ask the tough questions. And they're starting to ask that because they have decided this guy doesn't serve their political ends anymore. That Joe Biden is not only going to be devastating in the White House, that he may lose the House and the Senate for the Democrats. I actually believe if he stays in the race, it's not just good for Trump, it's good for Republicans having the trifecta. They could do all kinds of stuff. And that's where Democrats, that's where they are. That's what they see. That's what they know. I think the problem for them right now, because it's football Friday, I'll use a football analogy. Georgia, before Kirby Smart, had a coach named Mark Richt. Some of y'all may remember Mark Richt. Great guy, quite decent human, strong believer. The problem with Mark Richt was he'd win 10 games. He'd win 9 games. He would do a good enough job to not get fired, but he'd never take you to the big dance. And that's the kind of thing that Joe Biden is as a candidate right now. Democrats know it's not good. They know he's going to lose to Trump right now. But he's not doing it. It's not so tragically bad. Now, you and I are seeing this, and we're saying, yeah, it is. They're trying to tell themselves it's better than it really is. This happens all the time. Take it out of the political context. I've seen this happen with my grandfather. That declining mental faculties are going. There's some dementia, but it doesn't happen all at once. It just starts to go. And when it starts to go, people say, well, you know, maybe he's just having a moment, a senior moment, that kind of thing. They make excuses. That's what Democrats are doing right now, is they're making excuses. They're saying, well, it's not that bad. This is the Mark Richt problem. He's the presumptive nominee. It's not great. And so they're kind of trapped because, let's be blunt, a lot of Democrats are hoping that Joe Biden tanks very quickly so that they have a clear, easy path to replace. They don't. And so right now they're trapped, and it's going to be devastating. It's a fun time to be a Republican because you've got a disciplined candidate, Trump, who's staying out of this, letting it be about Biden. He's not. Frankly, I like the idea of pushing back the convention. I know that for logistic reasons, that's not possible. But man, let's not do anything other than let Biden just hang there, and everybody's watching everything he does and criticizing it. It's a big deal. Doris in Spring Hill wants to talk about Biden. Doris, welcome to the show this Friday. What you got?
Okay. I believe it's time for President Biden to retire.
Okay.
I honestly do. But I will say this. Being an older person, I am so proud of what he has done.
Okay.
He has traveled all over the world for the United States. People in the United States have said ugly things about him, poopy pants and whatever. But he stood for us. Whatever mistakes that he has made, whatever things that he said that wasn't quite right, he still represented the United States of America. He has sealed his place in history for the United States of America. And I'm going to hang up and I'm going to listen. But I am, as an older person, I am proud of the job that he did, proud of the job that he tried to do. Now, I'm going to hang up.
Okay, Doris, thank you very much for the call. I think Doris is taking an eminently reasonable position. if you support Joe Biden, if you thought that Joe Biden has done a great job, you can still think that and think he shouldn't be running, that he needs to step down. That's what Biden seems to struggle with right now, is it's not just Republicans saying, hey, he can't do it. It's people like Doris who like him saying, hey, you've done a great job. Really appreciate that. You just don't have it for the next 4 years. And anybody, I'm going to make some of y'all mad. It happens. I apologize in advance. Let's say right now the difference between Trump and Biden in terms of capacity is significant. So what if I asked Donald Trump, how can you guarantee that you won't be like Joe Biden in 2 years? If you win the White House, how can you guarantee that you won't be just like him? And unfortunately, the answer is you can't. When you're that age, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so Trump could win the election, and then we're having the same conversations about him shortly thereafter. And so this is the rough one when you run in candidates that are this old. And I don't say old in a pejorative that's bad. It's just a reality, is that you don't know when that decline, that exponential decline, I'm not talking about a slip up here or there, when that exponential decline hits. Now, Trump could make it to 90 and not have any issues. But there's no guaranteeing. We don't know. That's on us for putting up candidates who are that old. But we can see it happening to Biden right in front of our face. And, that to me is the challenge. And I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. How old is too old? Is age just a number? Or is there a number where we say, we have a minimum age for president, but we also have a maximum one too? I want to know what that is. I've just said I have a significant problem voting for anybody who's on the north side of the American life expectancy. If you were on the other side of the average American life expectancy, it's not that I'm angry at you. It's not that I'm upset with you. It's just that most policy that we make on the federal and even the state level is forward-looking. So you enact a law, and then it looks forward. That law is implemented, there's regulations, and then it's a forward-looking thing. So laws you pass today have impacts years down the road. Well, the problem with that is somebody that's beyond the American life expectancy is enacting laws, declaring regulations that they won't be around to see. And that's a problem for me. We'll continue to talk about this. We'll get to the GOP platform, Project 2025, some of the thoughts I have about the modern church and accountability. We'll get to your phone calls. I see several of y'all waiting, and we'll get to y'all on the other side of the break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Well, more Democrats calling on the president to forego his campaign and to say that the folks down in Houston are hot and bothered. Well, that would be an understatement. We'll have that story and more coming up at 1 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Welcome back. We're winding down the first hour of the Matt Murphy Show. A couple things that I wanted to address, and then I see you guys on the phone line, but because we're going to go to the break, hang on. Hang on. We'll get to you on the other side. That's the first thing we'll do when we come back. I want to make a couple points. Some of y'all on the Super Talk text line have made calls about, or not calls, but texted about Ms. Doris and her thoughts on Joe Biden. First of all, if you're a Biden supporter and you're calling into this show, you're pretty brave because everybody knows this is a conservative talk radio station. So I appreciate the different take. It's important to hear it. I respect that most of us may disagree with her on that. But I wanted to say that I still respect the office of the president. Even if Joe Biden's in there and hasn't done the best job, I still respect the office. And I think we need to remember that. And also remember, y'all heard what Doris had to say. How often do we, with politicians we like, give them the charitable treatment? We look at the things we like and kind of ignore the things we don't like. And sometimes we tell ourselves lies. We need to be really careful about that when we're criticizing somebody else. So just a couple thoughts. We'll get to the calls. We got the GOP agenda 2025 to talk about. We're going to have fun for the next 2 hours on this Friday. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Good afternoon. It's exactly 1 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Mostly sunny. We're up to 92 degrees. A complete weather forecast is coming up. President Biden, he takes off to Michigan today, where he will continue pressing his case for a re-election, despite growing calls from other Democrats for him to drop out. ABC's Stephen Portnoy, he's got more from Washington.
One complication hanging over this is that at the moment, there is no set plan for Democratic delegates to vote. The DNC's aim has been to have a virtual roll call sometime after July 21st to meet Ohio's August 7th ballot deadline. But at least one national committee man, Jamie Seltzer of North Dakota, says delegates should vote at their convention in Chicago after that deadline. President Biden said at his news conference that delegates should feel free to vote however they want, but he says choosing someone other than him is, quote, not going to happen.
Californians, they're dealing not only with higher temperatures, but higher fast food prices since the state implemented a $20 an hour minimum wage for fast food workers. But will this new law lead to layoffs? Alex Stone reports from Los Angeles.
It's hard to miss the higher prices for fast food here in California, while experts say it's still too early to know long-term what the new law that went into place in April will mean for jobs. The restaurant owners are still trying to figure out how to make up for the $20 an hour minimum wage. This man owns a Jersey Mike's sandwich shop.
We've had to cut back on their hours. We've had to cut back on staff.
Turkey sub now goes for over $11. He says that has customers cutting back on things like ordering drinks, chips, and dessert because everything is more expensive.
Well, now let's head down to Texas, where it's been 5 days now since Hurricane Beryl plowed into the Houston area. And as of this morning, over 1 million people in the Houston, Texas area, they're not only hot, but they are bothered and getting more so by the day.
Governor Greg Abbott has been out of the country on official business, but the lieutenant governor speaking on his behalf, calling for an investigation into the main power provider here, asking them why they've left so many people in the dark for so long.
That's ABC's Faith Abube reporting. That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Welcome back to the second hour of the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the best talk, the Super Talk, 99.7. Several of y'all are on the phone lines. I promised you when we came back, we'd get to you. So here's my deal. We'll get to you. Please be considerate. There's a bunch of folks on the line, and we'll get to everybody. So if you hang, we'll get to you. You got it? All right, here we go. We got Michael in Murfreesboro with a Republican comment.
Yes, Cameron. I'm glad to hear you again.
Howdy.
Yeah, you said, that'll be a trifecta if it keeps going like it is.
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Let's hope. But the thing is, what are they going to do? They've had that before and didn't do much.
Amen.
On their thumb.
Amen.
You know, I mean, come on, people. We want you to do something for us, not line your pockets. Because somebody put their arm around you and patted you on the shoulder and said, you know, you're a pretty good guy in your district before you came to Washington. But it's the Washington way now. You're going to do it our way. You know, it's like they changed. You can know somebody from your hometown and help get them in office because they are a good guy, because you know how they are. But it seems as soon as they get there, they change. So,
yeah, that's fair, Michael. I mean, I see it. I see it in people who are my friends, who I love, that they get around, they get told they're a big deal, and then it's about, well, wait a minute. I thought you were going to Washington to show some fiscal restraint, to make sure we didn't throw debt on our kids. But now you're touting all the grants you've gotten from the federal government. Well, which is it? Is that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, that's to them, that's doing for the people, you know. Let's get what we can. Let's get what we can. Get us elected again. Oh, well, you got a lot of callers. Appreciate you answering, and appreciate your show.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. Look, he's on to something here. The political class wants to give you the goodies. The fiscal number of fiscal conservatives that are actually in Washington now is extremely low. Extremely low. Because it's not a good political strategy. You're selling sanded cauliflower. Like, imagine that I was out there and I said, hey, we're going to eat lunch together. Would you like the sanded cauliflower? You'd say, well, I don't really like cauliflower anyway, but when you put sand on it, it really sounds terrible. Well, that's what politicians are doing if they're telling you, here's the problem. You're actually spending money from your grandkids right now. We are so far in debt. We can't spend. We're spending over what we need to. We need to really rein it in. And I need you to make some hard decisions so that we can protect our future. Now, that's the right answer. That's the right policy prescription. That's the way we need to have it. That's the folks we need to elect. But then there's something we really like. Well, we don't want to touch Social Security. We don't want to touch that. Oh, well, you understand there's trillions of dollars of unfunded liabilities that just as a matter of math, this won't work. It's not sustainable. Well, but we really like it. So if you could not fix that, that'd be great. And that's what happened. So it is the candidates that go, but it's also those of us who say we want a thing, but then when it comes down to it, we're sort of like, well, I kind of like goodies too. You know, it is what it is. We got Robert in Murfreesboro on replacing Biden. Robert, what you thinking?
Well, actually, what you just said kind of sort of leads into some of my questions. I've been unplugged from the radio for a little while, so this may have been talked about before.
All right.
So I'm just going to state some stuff, and then I'll sit back and listen.
All right.
A couple of things that I've noticed from all this stuff with Biden and Trump, you know, I was taught to respect the office, not necessarily the person.
Sure.
I've really been tested on that since the Clinton days, but, you know, that's just the way we should be.
It happens.
And I sit back and I see all the stuff from the Democrats, and I'm thinking all these things, and we see all these the thing last night, the debate. Is this the best they have? I mean, and I'm not saying this, you know, necessarily at him and his disease issue, because I've had some of that in my family. But when you look at all the people that are in Washington, and him and Harris, that's the two best things they got to put up. That's really what they got best to put up. Trump talked about that a little bit in the debate. You know, he said he didn't want to be there. He just as soon be back at Mar-a-Lago and sitting back and watching TV
Sure.
or playing some golf. And he's there because he feels like he has to be. You know, if Trump wasn't in the race right now, who would we have? Who do we have that stands out right now, really, that just really could really put the country together? I'm not a Trump rah-rah person. I mean, he's the guy who's out there. And the thing I like about him is he's got, you know what, to say what needs to be said and done. So there's that. And I try to tell people when they talk about politics, we're focusing on all this stuff right now, which we should. My dad used to say that this election, we keep hearing this next election is going to be very pivotal, one of the most important in history. And I think people will take that as a talking point, and they don't sit back and really realize how true that is. And either way it goes, I'm very absolutely 99.99% sure it's going to be Trump. But either one of them, this is it for them. They have no more. This is their last run.
Yep.
So after all of this, after all the things, the discussions we're having today, 2 or 3 years from now, who are we going to be looking at to come in next? I think it's going to be obviously whoever picks vice president. That's going to be the next probably person up. I think myself personally, I think that Lieutenant Governor out of North Carolina, I think his name's Robinson. He is just awesome. But outside of Trump coming in, when he comes in, he's going to be cleaning house for the next 4 years, cleaning up the crap, cleaning up the poop. Sorry about the pun. But who's next? That's really, I think, people aren't even talking about or thinking about right now. Who is going to be next? And I'll sit back and listen to what you got to say.
All right. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate the call. And I do think about it because I'm not supportive of, hey, there's 2 old guys at the top of the ticket. And I did hear what Trump had to say. And he said, hey, I didn't really want to run for this, but this guy's so awful. And I think he's being honest. I really do. I think he looked at it and said, ew, this isn't really good, because it has been a hassle for him. Now, he's a pretty prideful guy. He likes the attention. He likes being in focus. I get that, but he doesn't need it. And so I think he was being sincere there. But I think Republicans actually do have it better right now. Think about the primary. You had Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, and look, I get it. You don't like Nikki Haley, that's fine. Nikki Haley is a viable candidate that you can choose to vote for or not. Ron DeSantis was a viable candidate you could choose to vote for or not. Couldn't smile on stage. That didn't work out well for him, but he was a viable candidate. He's somebody that you can look at. Marco Rubio, he's like that. Hey, Doug Burgum impressed me. He really did. Seems like a sharp guy who could, do well. Now, didn't have the name ID or notoriety to really make much of a splash versus Trump. But Republicans have choices, and I can rattle off a bunch of other folks that Republicans could look at and say, okay, cool. We can rally around that. I think Democrats have the problem of their party is increasingly split. The media likes to talk about the Republican split and say, well, Republicans are very divided. It's the old guard establishment Republicans versus the populist Republicans. Bull butter. I mean,
What?
bull butter. You never heard that, Bill? Come on now.
Never in my entire life.
It's a Southern thing. I mean,
I was going to say collectivists always get confused by dissension of thought.
Yeah, well, that's fair. But I think this is the problem, is that the media focuses on the Republican split. I'm actually okay in realizing that my sort of nerdy policy, traditional limited government, free markets, rule of law, republicanism isn't as fashionable as it used to be. I'm okay with that. I look at a lot of the other stuff and I say, well, hey, I mostly agree with where we're going. I don't like some of the trade policy. I think it's not smart economically. I think it gives China a leg up. I don't like the idea that we don't really care about spending. I'm old school about that. I think we need to spend within our means. It's a math problem. You can either tax it or you can decide to spend less. You can't not tax and spend. That's insane. And so I get it. Populism has got the base of the Republican Party right now, but I don't think that we're misaligned too much on what we care about. The Democratic Party is really starting to experience this in ways that are giving them headaches. You got the AOC squad wing, really radical, extreme. They're basically socialist, basically. And they're fine with that. They would tell you that. So it's not a secret. This is Bernie Sanders, AOC, that whole world. And then you have more of your rank and file Democrats. There still is a population of more moderate Democrats, but there's a split. It's a significant split. And that party doesn't have a clear future right now. It doesn't have this is it. Joe Biden was supposed to be a bridge candidate. He got that question the other night. He said he was a bridge candidate to a Democratic future, and he hasn't been. And I don't think Democrats have really settled on what their future needs to look like. I actually think Republicans have a better idea. And so I'm positive about where we're going because I know that the future isn't Biden. It's not Trump either, just because of age. We got to figure this out, and I think we will. I'm not really scared of that at all. Kim in Nashville has been very patient and waiting. What do you got, Kim?
Hi, Cameron, I heard what you were saying earlier about you thinking that possibly there should be a cap or whatnot because of age, that there's definitely like a young age, like when you can come into
how old's
politics.
Too old?
Let me tell you something. Don't ever put a number on age. It's about the cognitive thinking. And when you think about this, the definition of that is the mental process that humans use to think, read, learn, remember, reason, pay attention, comprehend their information, and turn it into knowledge. Okay?
Sure.
So if Trump is sharp as a tack at 95 years old, good for him. And let me tell you something, my pocketbook and the economy that I saw was a whole lot better when he was in office than what this is going on, this hot mess right here. So it's not about age as a number. It's about whether the person can do the job. Now, I hear your flip side of the coin. On my flip side of the coin, the younger people, they scare me. They scare me.
I've got them in my house. They kind of scare me too.
Well, I tell you why. Because a lot of them grow up with these games that they play, the video games 24/7, 365 days a week. And when we were younger, to visit people, we were out there visiting our friends. We pick up the phone, we call. It's not about texting. We socialize. We're with people. There's more people skills. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not as much so anymore today. They're more disengaged from human interaction, one-on-one.
But by your argument,
that does scare me.
Kim, by your argument, kids should be allowed to vote provided that they have maturity and cognitive capacity to do so.
Absolutely.
Okay, but then how do we know? Like, should we?
You just can't go around the world and just be testing everybody on their cognitive skills.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We know we can't do that. So what we do is we create shorthand and say, you know what? If you're under 18, we're not going to allow you to vote because your brain's still developing. On the flip side, I'm just putting it out there for consideration. Is there a number where it's, by and large, you've started to decline after this age? In a way that we're going to make a rule that says no.
You know what? The first line of defense is, family needs to step in. Family needs to step in. They know the person and say, this is happening and try to get some help and go a different route. This situation with Biden is absolutely the joke of the entire world. For his family to parade him like he's, a 2-year-old at this point.
Sure, and
really.
I agree with you on Kim on that. I think it's ridiculous. But what I'm asking is, should we not have, and let's just call it 80, should we not have a rule that says, hey, if you're 80, you can't run for president. You can be president, you just can't run for president. And then we avoid this situation.
How about, I will compromise with you. Okay, let's say hypothetically, 80 years old, okay, you have to be, so at 80 years old, you have to pass a cognitive test by 3 different neurologists, okay, and get all 3 of them, the opinion and the clearance that you are fit mentally for that job.
So sort of like a senior citizen with a driver's test, saying, well, if you reach a certain age, you got to take the driver's test again to make sure you're still capable of driving a car. If you want to run for president at this age, you got to take a cognitive test to make sure you can still run the country. Is that fair?
I'm not going to compare with the driver's license test and whatnot with the older generation. I mean, that's something where if it was me personally, if I was in some position somewhere where I had some kind of control, I would have more frequent testing, driver's testing for the older Americans because when things change, they change pretty rapidly. They really do.
But Kim, you're trying to have it both ways. You're saying, well, it changes pretty. It happens pretty when it's driving a car. That's just driving a car.
Look,
you're saying we should have more frequent testing. That's just driving a car. It's not running a country. And then you're saying, but we shouldn't have an age limit.
You're the one. The whole topic right here today has been about when they can run for president.
I just asked that one question.
We're not talking about driver's license. That's a whole nother ballgame.
But it's
I'm
age.
not talking about driver's license.
We're talking about age.
When it comes to age to run for president, take buy a neurologist a cognitive test to see if you can do the job. Period.
Okay.
And then throughout your presidency, keep testing them. And if at some point that it's declining, then you know what? Then somebody needs to step in and do something. I don't have the answers to everything, and I will never claim that I do. But
sure.
You've got to start somewhere. And I tell you what, I would much rather go with somebody who's got age, wisdom, knowledge, people skills at 84 years old, sharp as a tack, than I would somebody 40 years old who just doesn't have the experience yet.
Yeah, that's a fair take. I appreciate it, Kim. Thank you for the call. And I think that's a fair position to say I'd take a really old person with experience who's cognitively there over somebody that has less experience. I actually take the position that somebody who has less experience but has sharper cognitive skills and has the capacity to make decisions, I want them to have the right kind of experience, and I'd take that all day long. So I think we can't speak out of both sides of our mouth on this type of thing. If we're saying that we're concerned about older people being able to drive cars, so we should test them regularly to make sure that they can do that, how much more serious should we be about this when it comes to the presidency of the United States? I mean, it seems to me like we might want to draw some lines there. Again, putting it out there for consideration. I realize that we can differ on this, but the idea that 80 is, well, that's just putting a cap on stuff, I don't think that's insane. I think it's pretty reasonable to say, hey, if you're 80 years old, we do this all the time. There's plenty of legal roles, like state Supreme Court justice roles, where 65 might be the cap. To say, okay, well, it's 80, it's 75, it's 78 to run the country, I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's at least worth having a discussion about. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.
The president and the House Minority Leader with a confidential meeting last night after the president's press conference, and a tour helicopter crashes in Hawaii. We'll have those stories at 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right. We need a brief education. Mike, you've been patient. We'll get to you on the other side of this next break, and I see some other callers. We'll get to y'all, too. I think I see Brian Huddleston over there. I wanted to educate you on bull butter. Okay? Now, Bell, he just laughed. He didn't know what that was about. So, bull butter is a phrase that means it's not true. It's an egregious lie, right? But it comes from margarine. Okay? So, in the 1940s, when margarine was pushed as a labor saver for the war effort, the cattlemen who realized that dairy was kind of, a big deal, they said it's bull butter because it's bull and it's sort of claiming to be butter. So it is a grand lie. That's where bull butter comes from. There's a couple other Urban Dictionary definitions that are not correct and far grosser, but the point is, it was about margarine. And so that's what that's where that phrase comes from. I didn't just make it up, say random things about bulls and butter. That's actually a thing. So now you know, you can feel better. The last caller, when Kim and I were talking, I think we actually agreed, and we were just having some trouble connecting on the agreement. But plenty of y'all on the Super Talk text line have said, man, this is just too old. Like, this is bad. And if we have minimum ages, by extension, we should be able to have maximum ages. And I think that's something we need to consider. Because Kim's idea of, the family should step in. Well, what happens if the family doesn't step in? We're seeing that play out before our eyes, and having a rule that says, you know what, 80. Some of y'all have said, well, life expectancies, that's too much of a limitation because people are living longer. Let's say life expectancy plus 5. How about just 80? And put it out there and say, here's what you got to do. You can be president when you turn 80. You can't run after you turn 80. Is that crazy? Is that too much? I don't think so. We're going to take a break. We'll get to the callers. I appreciate you calling in. This is Super Talk 99.7, and this is the Matt Murphy Show.
Good afternoon. It is 1:30. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. It's sunny. It's hot. 92 degrees, and it's going to get hotter. We've got a forecast for you here momentarily. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says he met with the president last night, and writing in a letter to his congressional colleagues, he directly expressed the full breadth of insight, heartfelt perspectives, and conclusions about the path forward that the caucus has shared. That's a quote from the letter. More now from ABC's Catherine Folders.
Jeffries does not say if he told Biden to remain in the race or drop out. He leaves that portion out of it. But what he says is that the discourse that House Democrats have been having behind the scenes, he writes, has been candid, clear-eyed, and comprehensive. This is what he was saying. At least he conveyed that to the president in their meeting on Thursday.
One person reported dead, and a search is underway for 2 more after a tour helicopter crash in Hawaii. ABC's Alex Stone has the latest.
Air and boat searches are underway off the coast of the island of Kauai after the tour helicopter crashed in a remote area with a pilot and 2 passengers on board. One person is confirmed dead, but 2 others are missing. Hikers reported seeing an explosion, and then the chopper crashed into the blue waters off Kauai.
That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
welcome back to the Matt Murphy Show. I'm Cameron Smith, and I see several of y'all on the line. I want to preface this next caller by saying he is a dear friend and brother in Christ, and he's also somebody who's doing 75 hard with me right now. 75 hard is, for those of y'all who don't know, is something that one of our friends brought up to us as a thing that would be good for us to do. They should have just called it 75 insane, because I'm supposed to drink a gallon of water every day, have 2 workouts, one of 45 minutes outside, one of 45 minutes inside or outside. It did. This is day 1. And we all have diets that we've posted that I am sitting here eating pecans and water. It's a thing, but it's a challenge that I've talked to my boys about. And so I've got Brian on the line. Brian, I'm assuming you're calling me to see how this is going.
Yeah. How are you feeling today, buddy?
I feel good. You know, the no alcohol thing of cutting that off last night after the bottle of Barolo and ice cream to kind of cram it in before cutting it off. That was not my best working decision.
That's right. 4 of us got together. We had a birthday cake with Walt and a couple sips of bourbon, and I made the mistake of stroking a cigar last night.
Yeah.
Probably should have stayed away from that.
But we're gonna be fit. We're gonna do some good things. And I'm telling you guys, having somebody that's you're accountable to and is encouraging you, I mean, that's a difference maker, don't you think, bud?
I do. So we got to go 75 days on this. How many days do you think you're going to make it? Are you going to make it to a full 75?
Yeah, I'm crazy. When it comes to this kind of thing, as long as I set the rules are clear, I'm good to go. And I got a diet that can work with my family. So it's not anything that's ridiculous. That's the big deal breaker for me, is that if my wife puts down some fried chicken or something that's tough. Like, it's real hard to say, sweetie, I thank you for your efforts here, but I'm going to politely decline because a bunch of crazy dudes and I decided to do something. But I think we got it covered. We got a good game plan. I have communicated with my spouse, which is always a good thing.
Well, and here's what I would say, Cam, is that I think we actually need this. And I think a lot more men and should actually consider taking on challenges. You know, we don't have, I mean, we think of challenges today as, you know, stuff at work and things for their families. And I'm not discounting that. There's challenges there. But I think we need to make some choices and say, I'm going to personally challenge myself to climb this mountain.
Yeah, I agree.
I need to make things hard for me for a little bit so I can appreciate when things are easy.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to a little bit of pain, a little bit of discomfort. You know, it's not going to be very convenient, but I feel like all of us are definitely going to be challenged. And to your point, we'll encourage each other through the challenge that we have.
Yeah, and I talked about it with my boys, because one of our mottos at the Smith family is Smith men do hard things. And so they're looking at me and saying, well, Dad, that seems kind of hard. And I said, that's the point. I can't tell you to do hard things if I'm not willing to do hard things. And so I think the kind of example we set, and then that translates into the political space. You know, if it's all about self-gratification of my politicians go get me what I want versus, hey, sometimes we got to do some hard things. Sometimes we got to show some discipline. We're never going to deal with the national debt if we don't have people capable of essentially denying themselves and saying, I guess I'm not going to get government goodies so I can take care of my kids and grandkids. Make sense?
I think so. But I think innate in us is our ability to achieve great things. I mean, I think sometimes we may walk off the path.
Yep.
But I think it's interwoven into, you know, the world in the humans that we have roles in this world, and we need to step up and go through those, attack those roles, and not just kind of sit back and let things be given to us. Like, I want to go out and hunt that deer and kill that meat and drag it home and put it on the table and get it all cooked up, right? I mean, I I think that we need to be challenged and challenge ourselves and do things that are hard. So I'm encouraged for the group, man. I'm looking forward to the next 75 days, and I can't wait to see your svelte body, and how great you look. And 2.5 bites.
I have the curvature of a penguin right now. It's very good. Well, I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you for the call. I really do.
Hey, you're going to do great, man. I expect you to make it to day 75 and beyond, all right?
I will. I appreciate it, buddy.
See you, man.
See you. Yeah, that dovetails with our current conversation quite well. Is we got to make some tough calls on some of these policy things and deny ourselves a little bit to do what's right for our country and our future and our kids. That's the truth. It's just tough politically. And so you got to take baby steps. Learn to do it with something like cheeseburgers, cookies, and deny yourself on that. I'm drinking a gallon of water. Yeah, guys, I'm on my 4th bottle. That's a lot of water. But, we're going to do it. We're going to get through it. Mike has been super patient from Jolton about a Democratic candidate. Mike, what are you thinking about?
Well, here's the thing, and normally I don't call, but this has been on my mind. What bothers me is the military readiness. We've got leaders around the country like Putin and Xi in China that are strong leaders. Then you got Kim Jong, which is, I think, mentally unstable.
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
then the leaders in the Muslim, a lot of Islamic countries that just hate us. And they have got ground troops in that section, plus in Russia that are battle hard. They've been in battle. And we've got military leaders, I think, that are weak and doing the wrong things. We've got great men and women in the military, but I think a lot of the new ones coming in don't understand that there's people out there, if they had boots on the ground in that situation, these people are ready to kill instantly. And our oil reserves have gone down, which to me is very dangerous because the ships, the planes, all that, and where are we going to get oil from if it comes to something like that? And
we'll get you oil from the United States. We got plenty of oil. We're good.
But, that just, it bothers me that I don't see anybody on the Democratic side that's ready to handle leaders like this. And yes, Trump is a little rough and a little strong, and yes, everybody would love to see this person with that ability and polish. But right now, we need somebody that can make the call without having to go make all kinds of meetings, make a call and deal with these leaders, because that's how you always go to high school and raise the bullies, is you've got to be able to make sure they understand that, you're not to be messed with.
Yeah,
and
I think that's fair, Mike.
That's about it, that part. And I know people's on their minds, but I don't think we've got so many fronts that are dangerous right now that it bothers me.
Well, I appreciate the call, Mike. I think that you're right on to something. And I think what Mike's trying to say is the world is a dangerous place right now. It really is. You guys who know me know that I call balls and strikes regardless of who the politician is. I'm telling you, one of the best things about Trump on the foreign affairs stage is some of those other leaders had to think, for everything that he's done that has not been positive with some of our alliances. He's had some fumbles and stuff like there. One of the things he did well, very well, was he made those tyrants, the Putins, the Kim Jong, I guess we're to Un right now, some of the folks in the Middle East, made them have to think, do I really want to cross that guy? With Biden, he's going to talk to me. He's going to send Blinken in, and Blinken's going to talk to me. And I don't have to talk to them. So they're just going to talk. But they're never going to do anything to provoke. They're never going to do anything to heavily retaliate. And if they do, it's going to be very measured. They're going to tell Ukraine, we're going to have, you have these weapons, but you can't use them any way you want. You have to just use them defensively. Well, imagine I tell you in a football game, you can only play defense. You going to win that game? So that's the difference, is that's what people know right now. And so I do think that stronger posture actually probably protects us better right now. And realizing who you're dealing with. Realizing, hey, this is Vladimir Putin, who wants to bring back the Soviet Union, who viewed the fall of the Soviet Union as one of the worst days in world history. If you understand that, then you understand his ambition here. He's telling you what he's going to do. He's like, I want to conquer Ukraine. I don't want to compromise. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to strike a deal. I'm going to conquer Ukraine. That's the goal. And so I think somebody like President Trump knows that and says, no, I'll stop you. And then we have whatever discussion that we have. But right now, the idea that Biden is saying, well, I've stopped Putin. Well, no, you haven't. And more importantly, you haven't developed a plan. You don't know what victory looks like, and you're hamstringing the people you're helping. So great work, man. Paul, we've got a little bit of time before the break, but you've been very, very patient. I want to get to Paul in Lebanon on free markets. What you got, Paul?
Hey, Cameron. Love it when you're on the air. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
I've got so many thoughts that go through my head. Long story, I run a bakery in Green Hills.
Okay.
I have put up with probably 70% of my ingredients have doubled because of inflation over the last several years. I won through COVID. I fought the employee issue. But this is what it all comes down to. We're talking about age limit.
Yeah.
You know, we all know that God's in control. Fear over faith doesn't win. Faith over fear wins.
Correct.
But here's what it comes down to, Cameron. It's the vote. It is still the free market. Whether it is an age issue or a political issue, yeah, it takes way longer to fix than we want it to. But if people would educate themselves and get out and vote, you solve the problem. But the education part of it is what solves the problem, not just the vote.
Yeah.
The Democrats manipulate information. We have the Republicans who can't seem to walk together and get the information out. You got to educate yourself. You got to talk about this to your circle of friends. You've got to pray over decisions.
But Paul, I agree with you. But this is the radical thing: is education empowers the voter, fear empowers the politician, and so a lot of politicians aren't saying what you're saying.
But that's where you know guys like you to get on the airway, okay? And there's all kinds of conservative radio programs across Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I know we're in the wrong state because we all know what color we are. But here's the problem: we all have relatives someplace else in the country.
Yeah, we do.
You know, each one's got to reach one person and say, "This is what I believe." Listen, you can tell me what you believe, but tell me why, and then I'll value what you believe.
Amen. Because otherwise it's just dogma. Like it's a mantra you're repeating.
You could be a left-wing lunatic in my book, but you tell me why you are, and at least I will respect you.
Yeah, I agree with that, Paul. Tell me what the name of your bakery is. You mind doing that on there?
Oh, we're in Green Hills. We've been here for 37 years. It's Great Harvest Bread, and we make 400 to 500 loaves of bread every day, and fresh, and muffins, goodies, treats, pumpkin stuff. Oh, my God.
Oh, Paul, this is going to crack you up, but one of my favorite things in the world is y'all's oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. I mean, I'm talking favorite things on the planet. My dad was having heart surgery in the hospital, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go head over there, and I'm going to get some chocolate chip cookies, and I got a bag of them. So
I knew it.
That's a heck of a bakery.
You know, happiness is when a cookie is as big as your face.
Yeah, that's amen to that. Now I'm doing 75 hard. Man, I'm looking at day 76, and I'm going to have to come get me some of those chocolate chip cookies.
Hey, listen, oatmeal is healthy. You can tell your doctor we use real butter.
Okay. Well, in that case, it's basically a health food, so I think it'll be fine. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you reaching out.
I love you, brother.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thank you.
Educate, man. Please keep educating.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, Paul's right. But it's one of the hardest things to do because people want affirmation more than information. And at this station, my column, anywhere we are, there's no exception. It's human nature. You want me to tell you you're good. You don't want me to tell you the truth. And that's what we do to our politicians. Tell me I'm good. Tell me what I think is right. And as long as you tell me that, then I don't care. Well, that's the wrong mindset. We need to know. We need to think. We need to understand. We need to have that disagreement, go back and forth, argue in an adult way. Because the moment that we see this all the time. Every host on the station, every columnist in America, that when you say something that challenges the audience that you're typically associated with, they get mad. They start calling you names. They start doing stuff. And then you got a choice to make. You can either say, okay, I still love you guys, but we're going to talk about this stuff. Or you just tell them more what they want to hear. They don't learn anything. They don't get any better. And folks say, well, you shouldn't speak. You shouldn't talk about the challenges in the Republican Party. You shouldn't talk about some of the stuff that well, I'm a conservative. I want us to be better. I don't actually look at the Democratic Party that I don't align with in any real way and say, I can criticize them, but that's not my family, right? That's not the folks that I connect with. And so I think we got to hold ourselves accountable, hold ourselves to be better. Chris Hand did a great job before this show and said, hey, don't be negative. Be positive. Like, some folks don't like to hear that, but that's the truth, and we should do that. Lindsay, I see you over there. We'll get to you after the break. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show, and you're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
To stave off the calls for him to step aside, the president having more one-on-one meetings to address supporters directly. And jurors in the Alec Baldwin manslaughter trial, they've been told to go home. And the search continuing now for a missing Sumner County teen. Those stories coming up at 2 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, we've got an exciting hour left. We're going to talk about the Republican Party platform, Project 2025. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7 and the Matt Murphy Show, and I'm Cameron Smith. Y'all come on back.
We are just a minute past 2 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. Still sunny. We're up to 93 degrees. We'll have a rather warm forecast. You think it's hot now? Well, hang on. We've got a growing number of Democrats now that are calling on President Biden to drop out of the 2024 race following that highly criticized debate performance we've been hearing about for 2 weeks now. The president trying to have more one-on-one meetings to address supporters directly. We'll hear now from Zoreen Shah with ABC.
President Biden is hoping to shore up support from critical groups, scheduling a meeting with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus today. The Bold Pack, which supports Hispanic and progressive candidates, set up the meeting. The president is also set to have a virtual call with the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, arranged through their political arm. On Monday, the president met with the Congressional Black Caucus, saying, "I need you. I'm not going to disappoint you. I promise you."
Now we head out west, where jurors in the Alec Baldwin involuntary manslaughter trial, they were told to go home, come back Monday, as the judge weighs a defense motion to dismiss the case involving the 2021 shooting death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the Rust movie set. The motion centers around some disputed ammunition Baldwin's team says the prosecution hid from them. More now from ABC's Jacqueline Lee. She is at the trial in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
After Hannah Gutierrez, the movie's armorer, after she was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, there was a Good Samaritan who turned in ammunition to police saying that this ammunition was supposedly on the set of the movie Rust. What the state did was that they actually filed this supplemental report. This ammunition was not placed with the rest of the evidence from the movie shoot.
Back here in Middle Tennessee, the father of the missing Sumner County teen, Sebastian Rogers, tells New 2 he has resumed his own private search for his son now that he has recovered from back surgery.
Now I don't really have much stopping me from getting out there and doing what I need to do.
There's a refocus. We're trying to zero in on more specific information that we are gathering.
15-year-old Sebastian Rogers, who is autistic, was last seen on February 26th. That was near Stafford Court in the beach area near Hendersonville. He was last seen wearing a black sweatshirt and black sweatpants. That is the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Time flies when you're having fun, and we've had fun today. The last hour of the Matt Murphy Show is here, but ironically, you will be able to hear 4 more hours of Matt Murphy after this. He'll be filling in for Brian Wilson on The Drive. We've covered a lot today. Bull butter, Biden's chances. The latest I saw over on X was that a super team of Democrats was going. So Pelosi and Barack Obama and some other, it's the super team. It's the super Democrats. They're better than regular Democrats, super Democrats. They're Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton.
Like a super delegate?
Yeah, kind of like that, but with better costumes. And so Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama, those type of folks are going to go and tell Joe Biden, it's time, Joe. It's so hard to say goodbye, but it's time. And Joe Biden is going to say, I have no idea who you guys are. And then it's just going to be awkward, and they're going to stare, and he's going to wonder why they're wearing costumes, and it's just going to be awkward. And I have fun with this. I believe that we should be civil in our political exchanges. I believe that we should treat people well. But there's no crying in politics, just like there's no crying in baseball. When you got a ancient candidate who's falling apart in front of everybody, you got to figure that out. And that means the other political party is going to give you a hard time about it. So, yeah, it is what it is. Lindsay's been very patient. She's always very patient, but she's probably going to criticize me of calling it a football Friday as opposed to free-for-all Friday. But, Lindsay, what you thinking?
Well, why would you change the name, Cam?
Well, because I'm excited about football. Very excited.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Football is not ridiculous.
Good and gone in Kansas City, so we don't want to hear shit about stuff about football.
Well, football, it's a tradition here. It's what we get excited about. It's what we got to do. And so...
All right, well, we have to laugh if we can't cry. Is it not true?
Yes, sometimes. Like when Mike Shula was coaching the Crimson Tide, I cried a lot. Hadn't cried for several years, and I may start crying again. I don't know. We got a new coach.
Well, I'm going to cry about Biden embarrassing my country.
Yeah? Okay.
And the election possibly be stolen and all kinds of stuff that we could cry about. I'm still on your school bill. I have a dog in that race.
Okay.
And I've been supportive of that the whole time. But it is a free football Friday. And I want to bring up a new topic.
Okay, go for it. You got to go for it.
Supposing, hypothetically, that hypothetically, a family member of mine that's been in the Navy for a decade, a little spy guy that I thought worked for the CIA, turns out he works for the NSA, and he spied on me.
Well,
suppose my son did that. I want Jay Sinclair. I want to know if I can sue the whole NSA or just my son. That has got to be some kind of breach of stuff to break into your mother's email and all her stuff and lock her out of everything.
Well, if you're using NSA tools to do it, then, that's a different animal. If, it's a kid that's breaking into
power of the person working in the NSA.
I mean, unfortunately,
that's abuse of power.
It could be, but I would first advise you talking to your son and saying, "What you doing, partner?" That's,
I did that.
Yeah, that might be where I would start.
But that's a personal matter. But no, seriously, that's a breach of some sort of legal line.
Yeah, that'd probably get your son in trouble too. So just a heads up on that one.
I hope it does.
Okay. Well, I appreciate.
Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you, Lindsay. Hey, you know what? So every now and then, as between family, things can get weird. And you got to address that. That's part of being a parent. I don't always love it, but it's what you got to do. I also appreciate you guys talking about the 75 hard that I didn't know so many of you had done that type of thing, and y'all are very encouraging on the Super Talk text line, 615-737-9986. Do hard things. I think it's really important. We have many opinions. I'm an opinion columnist. I do talk radio. I I share my perspectives broadly, but I think a lot of us do that. That we don't want to do the hard things, we do the easy things. It's easy for me to tell you what I think or what my perspective is. Doing hard work, denying myself, saying, I'm not going to do something I want to do right away. I got to set that example for my kids. That's a cultural problem we have right now. Too many of us just, if I want it, then I want it and I need it. I have to have it right now. I may even have a right to it. I sat at the dinner table with my boys the other night and we talked about rights. And I said, well, do you have a right? My son hurt his wrist in oddly a fast go-kart injury. And I said, well, do you have a right to health care? And just instinctively, like, health care is a good thing. He's heard about this in the news. He said, sure, yeah, you got a right to health care. I said, well, then you have a right to tell the doctor he's got to treat you. He said, well, no, I don't have a right to that. I think he has to stop me from dying, but he doesn't have to do some other stuff. And we got into the discussion of negative and positive rights. Yes, my family sometimes has some very dorky conversations, but it was just telling to me that that's the culture, is if you want it, you have a right to it. Go find your truth. Whatever you want is right. And that's what he's inundated with. And so the other boys, we went back and forth. We talked about, well, do you have a right to privacy? Do you have a right to all these different rights? So, well, do you have a right to life? How about liberty? What does that mean? And we just talked about it. And what I realized was my boys, and I'm very, very proud of them, that they learned to do discipline. They learned to do hard things. We've been talking about that since they were babies. Of we're gonna challenge you so that you become resilient, so that when adversity hits, you're prepared. You don't wilt. That's where frankly higher education has failed, because everybody knows so many things, has so many elite thoughts, but when they're confronted with somebody that just says no, I mean, they melt down. And I've seen that so regularly, and I've seen that as a cultural phenomenon with adults, that adults who disagree don't know how to encounter someone who disagrees with them and not freak out. All this is to say that resilience is something that we need to work on. That's the idea of that 75 hard. It's a lot. In fact, Wendy went and I'm sorry, guys. 75 hard is a workout routine. Wendy apparently went to 75 and hard, and that's not a workout routine. So I apologize, Wendy. 75 hard's workout routine.
We are not responsible for your typos and errors when you are surfing the web.
Yeah. I thought better of you, Cameron. Well, I don't. No, it's a workout routine. So I'm just letting you guys know that. But thank you, Wendy. Thank you for that. We'll see how it goes. I'm telling you, for those of you that can see the video, I've had this bottle of water next to me while I've been doing the show, and I'm about halfway through the 128 ounces a day that you're supposed to get in water. And you're supposed to, I think it's 10 minutes. I blow past 10 minutes a day of reading nonfiction. That just kind of how I am. That's part of it. A diet, and then doing the 2 workouts. It's pretty intense. So I'm going to head to the gym after that. Those of y'all in the Franklin area at Lifetime, say hi. I always love it. Randy out there caught me on the treadmill the other day and said, hey, I got thoughts. I love it when people come up and chat and tell me where I'm wrong, tell me where I'm right. It's pretty great. On the Super Talk text line, 8161 says, why don't they just tell Joe he's serving his second term now? And then maybe he'll just be ready to go and just pack up and leave. That is an option. It is a glorious catch-22 right now for Democrats. It is a lot of fun. I did want to take a little bit of time to run down. We've talked a little bit about the Republican Party platform. We did that on Wednesday. I want to talk a little bit about this Project 2025. I've got a column coming out on it. It'll probably drop today or tomorrow. I went through it. It said 922-page PDF. It's descended from the 1980 mandate for leadership that the Heritage Foundation, it was relatively new at that point, did for the Reagan administration. So this isn't like a wild idea. But this is a pretty impressive work product. The left is attacking it because it's terrified of it. And frankly, it should be, because it's a radical reimagining of the federal government. It's not just the present inertia machine that's running us off a cliff. It says we need to do some common sense things. They have 4 different pillars that they're looking at. And I just urge people, whenever somebody says be afraid of a thing and don't read it, it's probably a good idea to read it. Probably a good idea to look. The 4 pillars they talk about, it's basically, this document is the first pillar of this Project 2025. This is the mandate for leadership. It's a consensus conservative view of how major federal agencies should be governed. There's some brackets where there's some different disagreements, and a president can come in and say, hey, it could go this way, go that way. The second pillar is a personnel database of like, hey, here's some folks that you could hire to bring into your administration. Pillar 3 is an administration academy. It's a training system from the experts in the coalition. And some of the experts from this group are pretty sharp. And pillar 4 is a playbook, and this is transition plans, which is really, really smart to do some of these things. The principles that are in this, though, I think are pretty sharp. They're conservative ideas, and some of it's dorky. Like the Rick Dearborn, a friend of mine, Deputy White House Chief of Staff for Trump, wrote the first one. It's basically just a very comprehensive view of the White House. Who should serve in what capacities? How many deputies should you have? It's very, very thorough, but it's pretty, for lack of a better word, boring. It does not terminate the Constitution, as the Biden administration has alleged. It's simply saying, hey, this is an ideal scenario. We think this makes a lot of sense. And the whole thing's kind of like that. Now, is it very pro-life? Yeah. Does it have some things in there that I disagree with? Yeah. I'll give you a real quick example. I do believe that we should have age restrictions for pornography. I've long advocated that. I've written about it. But this goes a little further and says, hey, this should be banned completely, and pornographers should be incarcerated. Okay, that's pretty intense. And I think that's probably unconstitutional. So that's something that I can say doesn't matter if I don't like it, whether it's politically popular or not. I don't think it's constitutional, so you can't do it. Okay, I disagree with it. It doesn't mean I disregard everything else. For example, some of the reforms about OIRA and the Office of Management and Budget, they're mind-numbingly boring, extremely sharp. It's something that we really need to investigate. And if I disagree with you on abortion policy, who cares? I don't think, I agree with Trump. I think the state should handle abortion policy. There shouldn't be federal legislation on abortion. It should be left to the states, and the federal government should stay out of it. Okay, cool. You can disagree with that. That's fine. How do we feel about regulation? The idea that is this Project 25, particularly the mandate for leadership, is a buffet of ideas that are well-researched, very thorough, and when you agree with them, they're pretty sharp. So we'll talk a little bit more about this. You can chime in on the SuperDoc text line, 615-737-9986. As I go through these, you may want to say, hey, go in a little more detail on that. I'm happy to do that. We got to take a break, though. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on SuperDoc 99.7.
President Biden campaigning in a swing state today, and one of the biggest hacking incidents in history has been revealed. We'll have those stories at 2:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
All right, welcome back, folks. Winding down the last hour of the Matt Murphy Show. I will tweet out, some of y'all have asked for a link to the 2025 mandate for leadership that's part of the Project 2025. This document's been out since April of 23, okay? And in my column that's about to drop, I'll tweet that out too, and y'all can go read it. Democrats basically, how do I say this delicately? The entire media narrative you hear is contrived. It is from basically corporate media outlets that push it and then algorithms that reinforce it. How do I know this? Because this mandate of leadership has been out since April of 2025. It is such an existential threat to democracy that Democrats really hadn't said anything about it until Biden debates Donald Trump. And on the same day, Joe Biden puts up a basically website in his that's a page off his campaign. And it talks about Project 2025, tries to tie Trump to it, makes a bunch of claims that are very much political spin, like this would terminate the Constitution. No, it doesn't do that, obviously. And the problem is that night he had a really bad debate and it became all the news. And so it kind of set them back for a minute. They were planning on rolling out a bunch of social media talking about this is the dark plan of the conservatives. Well, it is a plan. It is a conservative plan. There's nothing particularly dark about it. Is it a very conservative plan? Yeah. Take or leave it. Find the things you like and agree with them, and then the ones you don't, move on. That's the right idea here. And so what happened is Biden attacks Trump. Trump, he just goofed. He messed up. He should have just let the conversation go and let Biden try to make the distraction as opposed to dealing with his failing capacity. But Trump said he didn't know anybody related to the Project 2025. That's just not true. That there are a ton of folks he knows, and some of whom he knows on a first-name basis. So the idea of he didn't know anybody is just not true. And so the media then attacks that and says, see, he's trying to hide, and this is the real agenda.
Do you think that he could have possibly meant he didn't know they were associated with it?
No, he knew.
Okay. I believe that too. I was just curious what your thoughts.
Yeah, he does know. I mean, when it's folks like Rick Dearborn, who is his deputy White House chief of staff, like he's right there. Russ Vought, his director of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, like we should be very concerned if he didn't know these people were involved or doing this. And it's a lot of organizations that he knows. So, again, there's just not a credible way to read that in anything other than he was being dismissive and said something that wasn't true. So I want to call balls and strikes and say that. But the point is, it's just a plan. It's a conservative plan for conservative policies and ideas. If you like the liberal status quo of giant government just rolling over culture, let's just keep doing that. Otherwise, hey, Heritage Foundation did a lot of work, brought in a lot of people, built a lot of consensus. And frankly, there's some stuff in there. For example, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Heritage Foundation says, yeah, we should rejoin that. They say, hey, this tariff experiment hadn't worked. And those were the big gripes that I had of Heritage Foundation playing along with the Trump administration on trade policy. I had huge issues with that. Well, they said, hey, this doesn't work. This is the right way to do it. Now, Trump can ignore that, but that's the whole point. If Democrats hate this stuff, then they should come up with their own recommendations, their own plan, and compete in the theater of ideas. The idea that Heritage Foundation is bad or scary for coming up with, I don't know, things that a conservative think tank should do is ridiculous. And this is a distraction, and Democrats are trying to convince folks that this is an evil plan that will radicalize everything, and it's just silliness. It's just silly. There's four big components, broad fronts they call them, that they focus on in this document called the Mandate for Leadership that's 922 pages. 1, restore the family as the centerpiece of American life and protect our children. I think most people listening here probably agree with that. 2, dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance to the American people. Don't concentrate all the power in Washington. That's something a lot of folks agree with, and they're not all Republicans. Defend our nation's sovereignty, borders, and bounty against global threats. Yeah, okay. That's not super wild. 4, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. And they go through and explain it. And so for something that's been out there this long, this is a contrived distraction to keep you off the main thing, which right now is Joe Biden's capacity. And yes, Todd on the Supertalk text lines pointed out that the Heritage website was attacked. I think it was the news org that's loosely affiliated with them. But yes, there were some hackers that were upset about this. I think Sandra had mentioned on the Supertalk text lines, well, wait, maybe at the time he didn't know who was involved. You can't say what he knows and doesn't know. I can say as a matter of fact that he knew this project had been produced. He knew the people that had worked on it. He is eminently aware of what it is. It doesn't mean that he somehow ordained it, authorized it, or did anything with it, but he's not being credible if he says he doesn't know the people affiliated with the project. He does. It's not his project. It's not a Republican project. It is a Heritage Foundation project with former Trump administration officials, think tanks, different groups. That's who this is. And so it's completely fine for him to disavow it. He doesn't have to say, I don't know anybody over there. But he can say, that's their thing. It's not my thing. That's totally fine. And that's what he's doing, because he's saying, why would I endorse something that's not mine and say this is all good, as opposed to saying, I don't. You don't have to say you don't know the people. That was a bridge too far, and it created an attack point, and that gave life to this thing. But I want to put it to bed. This is something you should read. You should look at for yourselves, see what you agree with, see what you don't agree with. We'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side of the break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to Super Talk 99.7.
Good afternoon. It is 33 minutes past 2 p.m. I'm Jay Harper with your top stories. It's sunny. It's hot. 95 degrees on Music Row, and it's going to get hotter. We've got a forecast coming up that's not all that great, really. All right, President Biden, he heads to Michigan today to rally for his reelection, but before he left, he met with Democratic lawmakers as the number of those urging him to get out of the race continues to grow. ABC's Stephen Portnoy reports.
In an effort to stop the hemorrhaging of support, the president huddled with groups of Democratic lawmakers, including the Congressional Hispanic Caucus and the Asian Pacific American Caucus. That after top House Democrat Hakeem Jeffries says he privately shared with Biden the heartfelt perspectives of his colleagues and the path forward that they're seeking. Jeffries has not shared those perspectives publicly.
In possibly one of the largest hacks in history affecting the data of nearly every one of the 114 million customers of AT&T Wireless. The company, they're trying to ease concerns of customers and shareholders. Information about phone calls and texts sent and received by AT&T customers from May to October of 2022. It was illegally downloaded from a third-party cloud workspace. That happened this past April. The company stresses that the actual calls and texts themselves were not part of the data breach, and they do report that someone has been arrested in this case. That is the latest news. We've got weather on the way. I'm Jay Harper, WTN News.
Welcome back, folks. Cameron Smith here. Sandra made a good point that she had never heard of Project 2025 until after the debate. There's a reason for that, because Joe Biden decided to launch an initiative to all of the media on the day of the debate. And so it became a thing because the media likes to echo the things that are the attacks of the President of the United States. And so given the option of covering his declining capacity or focusing on this stuff, all the pro-Biden folks said, look, here's something we can talk about instead. And so they started echoing the political talking points that are on that website. And that's, I just don't want you guys to be unarmed when it comes to talking about this thing. Again, it's a Heritage Foundation project. It's take it or leave it. It's a lot of good ideas, a lot of work. It's very conservative, but one, it's not scary. And two, it's not Trump or RNC stuff. Democrats want to say it is, but it's just not. So don't let the conversation here be something that gains traction. When you hear people talking about that, one of y'all, I think it was Todd, had mentioned the Heritage Foundation might have ties to China. Well, they have a funny way of showing it. If you look at the mandate for leadership, it talks specifically about basically cutting ties with China and saying, China is taking advantage of the United States. Very aggressive on the foreign policy front with respect to China. So that's why. The reason it has come up and not just sat there as a boring policy document is because Joe Biden needs a distraction. So when people try to route you to Project 2025 and say it's going to kill America and it's going to do everything, just say that's a Heritage Foundation policy document. Yes, there were a lot of Trump administration officials that contributed, but there were a lot of folks who weren't Trump administration officials who contributed. And it's by no means binding on Trump or any other president. Biden could take up those ideas if he wanted to, if he won. So don't get sidetracked on that stuff. Again, I got a column coming out on it to clarify the air, and that's the game, right? What are some other things that we can distract to stop talking about Joe Biden? We've got Jason on the line. GOP is not helping. Jason, what you thinking?
Well, I guess I'm just frustrated, man. I'm long-time listener, and we get caught up in these, what Joe Biden's doing or how he is cognitive and stuff, and even when Trump was in office before, I've never voted Democrat in my life, and I'm 50 now, but taxes are still where they are. Americans are still treated horrible. Even under Trump, we were treated horrible. Things were a little better, but, you're still having to work 2 jobs to live, take care of your family. When are we going to stop worrying about what everybody's doing in the world and where they, we're worried about what Vanderbilt's doing with transgender surgeries and stuff and all this stuff. And it's not my thing. I get that. But when are we going to start focusing on how Americans are treated?
I think that's a great point, Jason. I think the issue here is that the distractions are easier. So we can talk about a lot of the social stuff and different this and that. That's a lot easier than saying, hey, the federal bureaucracy is immensely expensive and you're paying for it. It's restricting your freedom, your options, your choices, and you have to pay for it at the same time. Solving that takes a lot of work. Politicians don't want to work and solve that because it's not a clear partisan win. We're going after Vanderbilt on, their policies related to child gender affirmation surgeries. Okay, that's a winner. It gets people charged, fired up, and it's a relatively light lift. That's the truth.
It is. But just one more point. I had to laugh. I took my wife to the doctor back last month, and then because of my insurance through my employer, I had to pay $380 for my wife to be sent to the appointment. And of course, it's a doctor's office, so you're in there with the other people, and you hear things that you probably don't really need to hear or didn't intend to hear. But there was another lady in there on TennCare, which is the Tennessee's version of I don't pay any money, but I get free health care. And especially in her for free. And I thought to myself, how dumb are we? How dumb have we really been as Americans that I'm paying $380 for my wife to see this doctor, and this woman's getting to see a doctor for free for insurance that I'm paying for?
Yeah.
I said, we have really turned into sheep.
Yeah, you get to pay for both of them, man. That's how it works. And I appreciate the call, Jason. I think that's the challenge. It's just easy for the inertia machine to spend money on things that sound good. The Bible tells us the poor will always be with us. So should we care for the poor? Absolutely. But it's really easy just to spend government money on all sorts of random programs and things and benefits and not kind of remember that the government doesn't have any money. The government has no money. The government takes your money to pay for things, and it borrows money on your behalf to pay for things. The government is not a for-profit engine. Yes, they have leases and royalties, and there's some de minimis in the scope of the whole federal government income that's generated just because of natural resources and things like that. But by and large, the government takes your money and the government borrows money that you are obligated to pay back at some point. That's how that works. And that's unfortunate. It is tragic, but you can't change that until you're honest about the politicians that you actually vote for. Because this is what I find hilarious in looking at the Republican Party platform and looking at all the different plans. We always talk about fiscal responsibility. We always say, well, yeah, we're going to rein in the federal government. We're not going to spend like we're drunk. You know what we always do? We always spend like we're drunk. Always. And I mean always.
The Republicans have never, never, never sliced a single cent off the federal debt.
Yeah,
ever.
It's and people don't understand. They're like, well, that doesn't make any sense, Bill. How can you say that? Well, part of the problem, folks, is that if you're running a deficit each year, you never get to the debt. It doesn't matter if Republicans say, let's just say next year, Republicans take over and they do a great job of reining things back in fiscally, and the national deficit in 1 year is only $400 billion. That's a radical reining in of the fiscal nuttiness that we've seen. It doesn't touch the national debt.
When we had a surplus under Clinton, they were arguing about what to spend it on.
Yeah.
Not, hey, we can throw this at the debt. It was, what are we going to spend it on?
Yeah. For example, today, down in Mobile, Alabama, I know that, some of y'all go that way, going towards the beach, going to Orange Beach, places like that. The Bay Bridge got a grant from the federal government for like $450 million, $500 million. Every politician down there is Republican as the day is long, and they are all, and I mean all, just crowing about it. We have a multi-trillion-dollar deficit, and look, this is going to be so big, it's such a big deal. Well, the problem is, if we spend money we don't have, even if it's on good things, there are no federal expenditures on punting puppies. There's just not. So most of the stuff in the federal government is going to be good stuff. It's goodies. That's why I call them goodies. And that's the problem, is nobody wants to say no to a good thing. It's easy to say no to a bad thing. Whenever we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse and how Republicans are going to cut back, they find like some stupid study of, well, NIH did a study on do squirrels prefer pecans or raisins? Okay, well, we're going to cut that. Okay, cool. It won't move the needle at all from a material fashion, but yeah, it's an easy one to say that's kind of dumb. But when it comes to a bridge, a road, or whatever, politicians crow about that stuff all the time. See, I went to Washington and I got you millions back. Well, the problem is if every politician says that, which most of them do, it's because they're spending more than they're taking in, which is how we get a deficit, how we got, nearing 40 trillion in debt. We're nearing the point where the debt service is $1 trillion. Every year you're paying about $1 trillion. It's bigger than the Department of Defense. We're coming up on that, where we will spend more on debt service than defense. We got to take a break. I'm Cameron Smith. You're listening to The Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7. Well, it is closing time for the Matt Murphy Show, but, well, we have a situation. We have a situation, folks. And it may result in you hearing the sound of my voice into the drive with Brian Wilson, but that's fine. Matt Murphy's out driving his truck. He's driving all around the mid-state. And we'll figure it out. But as he does that, as he gets back to the studio so he can spend the evening with you, we'll figure out all those details. But I really do appreciate what's going on here as far as the Project 2025 and your comments on all of that. Here he is. Here's Matt Murphy. Matt, what's going on, man?
Hello, Cameron. How are you? Matt Murphy, live in parts unknown.
Yes.
In beautiful, the volunteer state, Tennessee. I'm on my way back to the radio station, Cameron.
Why is that, Matt?
Well, here's what we realized. We realized after 3 hours of what you've been doing on the Matt Murphy Show, you've been doing such a jam-up, bang-up job.
Yeah.
The audience has spoken, and they want more Cameron Smith in their lives. And
okay.
So, by golly, we're going to give it to him, Cameron.
Okay. So, but you're coming
here's
back.
What the real deal is, in the nicest way that I can possibly say this, there was a slight miscommunication over my on-location broadcast today. And so as I came out, I'm loud, Cameron, but I don't think I'm loud enough to overcome no broadcast equipment.
Yeah, that'll slow you down every time.
Yes. And sadly, we had no broadcast equipment. We had a lot of friendly WTN listeners already willing and able to give it a go. But I thought that maybe mass communication would be superior to narrowcasting to the 6 or 7 people that were already assembled waiting on Matt Murphy on the Brian Wilson Show, The Drive on Super Talk 99.7. So I'm on the way back. I'll be there as soon as I can get there, my friend.
Well, I'll hold down the fort for you.
Hey, hold down the fort. Would you mind going over all of Project 2025 during the time that I'm away so I don't have to?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I got you covered, man. We're going to have fun with Project 2025. Matt Murphy will be joining us in a little while. The Drive with Brian Wilson is next, but it will be with Cameron Smith and then later Matt Murphy. Technical difficulties happen, folks. We appreciate your patience. We're going to have another hour of fun. And I'm here for it. You're here for it. Let's do this. I'm Cameron Smith. This is the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7.